Hi, welcome back to the video lecture of software engineering. So we are discussing an influential technique of Agile method, that is extreme programming, or basically known as XP programming. So in the extreme programming there are three principles actually. That means per day we can develop several new versions, and only in every 2 weeks we are going to deploy those new versions what we have developed to the customer. And the third principle says each and every version or each and every build should be pass the test cases. We have some test cases. Each and every new version should be get tested. Once they are get tested successfully, only we can adapt those new versions and we will go for deploying those new build to the customer. So today's class we are going to discuss what are the practices or what are the principles that follows the extreme programming. Actually there are 10 number of practices, but we are not following all the 10 number of practices, because if we follow all 10 number of practices of the extreme programming, that will be very difficult, because all 10 number of principles or practices of extreme programming, to follow those 10 number of practices, this will be very difficult. So according to our situation, we will pick some principles and we will apply those principles for developing a software. So let's see what are those 10 principles or 10 practices of extreme programming. The first principle or practice of extreme programming is incremental planning. So we have already discussed so many times about this incremental planning. So incremental planning means requirements are recorded on story cards, and the stories to be included in a releases are determined by the time available and their relative priority. The developers break these stories into development tasks. So first the requirements will be recorded on the story cards, and who will use that story card? That story card will be used by the customer. Then among the story cards we will define what actually we are going to release. That means we are breaking those story card into development tasks. Then after breaking the story into different tasks, then we will go for release. That means what is actually the time available and what is the relative priority of those tasks, that will define when to release the new build or when to release the new version to the customer. So in the incremental planning, which is the first principle of extreme programming, we are planning how to release the new versions in an incremental manner. That means first the customer should give his requirement in case of story card. So while we are talking about the plan driven model, so in case of plan driven model, there is a formal communication between the customer and the development team, and that formal communication is the SRS document, that is software requirement specification document. But in case of agile principle or extreme programming, we don't need those formal communication like documentation. So what actually or how can the customer will give his requirements to the development team? That is based on the story card. In our forthcoming classes, we will go for that how is the story card, how we can write our requirement in the story card, and how to convert those story cards into different tasks. So we will go for those story card and dividing the story card into different tasks in our forthcoming classes. But you just remember, the customer will give his requirements to the development team in terms of some essays or stories, or that story is actually known as the story cards. So after getting the story card from the customer, we will divide the story card into different tasks. That means the customer is actually communicating with us in an informal way. So we need to convert this into formal way. So we need to divide which task actually there. For those tasks we are going to develop a software. So after dividing the story card into different tasks, then we will plan for the release. That means if there are n number of tasks, we are not going to deploy the n number of versions to the customer at a time. So we will ask the customer to prioritize those n number of tasks. After getting the prioritization, then we will pick some task and we will work on that task, and after completion of that version, we will go for deploying the version to the customer. So this is the first principle, that is incremental planning. The second principle says the small releases. It is obvious that if we are planning for incremental way, obvious we are going to release the subsystem into a small releases. We are not going to release each and every version at a time. We are going to release some small versions. So small releases means the minimal useful set of functionality that provides business value is developed fast. Releases of the system are frequent and incrementally add functionality to the first release. So what actually this says? This says we are going to develop the minimal useful set of functionality. That means the version that will fulfill the minimal useful set of functionality which provides some business value. What is actually our requirement? Is that requirement is fulfilled by this version or not? If it is fulfilled by this version, then we will go for deploying the version to the customer. Next, what it says, that is release of the system are frequent and incrementally add functionality to the first release. So why incrementally add functionality to the first release? That means when we pick the first priority, that is the task has the highest priority, we will pick that task and this will be the first release. The minimal functionalities that fulfill our business goal or whatever my customer requires, that will be applied in the first version, and after that whatever the new versions may be built, that will be integrated with the first version. Second version will integrated with the first version, then it will deploy to the customer. Then third version will integrated with the first version. Now the first version is what? First and second that are combined together. So when third version will build, that will combine to the previous system and then it will deploy to the customer. So this is the second principle, that is small release. We are not going to deploy a large release, a large version, because if we are going to deploy a large version to the customer, then it will be very difficult to integrate a new version to this large version. So if we will follow that we should release some small versions, then it will be very easy to integrate or to merge them together, and it will be very easy to test independently each and individual releases. So this is the second principle, that is small releases, that we need to follow in the extreme programming. And the third says, that is simple design. Obvious, if we are going to deploy the system as an incremental manner, that means we should follow the simple design. So enough design should be carried out that will fulfill the requirements. We should not make the design a conflict one. We should make the design a simple, because here in the extreme programming, our system is expecting the change anticipation and the change tolerance. So if we will make the design simple, so that our system should be flexible and our system can accommodate any changes that will come in our future. If our system or if our design or if our system architecture will be complex, then it will add some more complexity while developing the software. So that is what actually we have already learned in the Agile method principle, that is maintain simplicity. So wherever it is possible, we need to remove the complexity from the system design, from the developing software and for the developing process. So we need to make it as simple that the development team, that the new or the next development team who will come, they can carry out all this process easily, and the end user or the customer who will use the software, they can use the software very easily. So we need to make the design as simple. And the fourth one says the taste first development. So taste first development means An automated unit test framework is used to write test for a new piece of functionality before that functionality itself is implemented. So before implementing the functionality, we should make a test plan for that functionality. Take an example. Suppose the refrigerator that is in my home is not working. So what I will do, I will go for a mechanic or for an electrician. Then I will say him that this is the problem, my refrigerator is not working. And there he will say me that come after 5 days and your refrigerator will be working. So that time I am not going to talk with him technically. That means I am not going to tell him that this should be amplifier, this should be voltage. No, I am just going to tell him that after 5 days I will put a bowl of water into the fridge. If it is freezed or if it will be freezed, then I will pay you. That means I will convince that the refrigerator is working. If the bowl of water will be not freezed, then I will not give any money for this repairment. So what actually I am doing, I am making a test plan. That means if I will put a bowl of water into the refrigerator and the refrigerator will able to freeze that bowl of water, then I will know that my refrigerator is working. If the bowl of water will not be freeze, then I will know that my refrigerator is not working. So I will not pay anything for this. So this is the test plan. So in the extreme programming or in the software development field also, we should make the test plan. Before the developing process will start, we will first develop some test plans, and according to the test plan, we should develop the software. So that is the test first development. That means whatever the functionalities that my customer asks for, I should make some test plan for those functionalities before implementing the functionality. So what is my mean by implementing the functionality? That means I will go for the design, I will go for the coding, I will go for testing. That is the implementation of the functionality. So before we will go for coding, we should know that this should be the input, this should be the output. My software should be work on this functionality. So these are the test plan for any software development. The next principle or the fifth principle says refactoring. So refactoring means all developers are expected to refactor the code continuously as soon as possible code improvements are found. So this keeps the code simple and maintainable. So refactoring means, suppose take an example, there are two students, the student A and the student B. So what A will do, suppose I am giving some question or I will tell him that you should make a software. So the student A will go for a complete or detailed design. After making a detailed design, then only the student A will go for coding. So in that case, what actually happens, when we have some detailed design, that means my system is not expecting any changes. But in case of student B, the student B will go for directly coding. So there, if some changes occurs, then the student B should be capable of changing the code frequently, because the customer's requirements are always changed. So according to the customer's requirement, the student B should be modify the code. But in case of student A, as student A has some detailed design, that means if some changes will occur or if the customer wants some changes, then the student A will go for detailed design. There the student A will change the system architecture, and after that, that will be very easy for modifying the code. If the student B is not a good programmer and the customer wants some changes frequently, then it will be very difficult for the student B to change the code. So in case of extreme programming, the team of extreme programming says that we don't need some detailed design, we don't need some requirement specification document. What actually we are concerned for? We are concerned for the coding. We are concerned for the output of our practice, or we are concerned for what actually our product, the product quality should be good. So whenever the customer wants some changes, the extreme programming team should be capable of change their codes very frequently for the improvement, for the product improvement. Suppose we want to add some new functionalities, we want to add some new features to an existing software. So that is actually developed by using the extreme programming. So the extreme programming team should be capable of adding those features. How they will add? By modifying their code frequently. So that is the fifth principle of, that is refactoring. So while we are changing our code continuously for improvements, that is known as refactoring. And the sixth one says pair programming. So pair programming means developers work in pairs, checking each other's work and providing the support to always do a good job. Okay, I am actually combining the pair programming and collective ownership. So this will be very easy actually. So collective ownership means the pairs of developers work on all areas of the system so that no island of expertise develop. And all the developers take responsibility for all of the code. Anyone can change anything. So the pair programming and collective ownership, these two principles says that developers work in pairs. So what is actually that? Developers work in pairs. That means if I am a software developer and you people are also software developer, that means we will go for a development team and we will work on a team. I am not going to develop a software individually. I will have some colleague and we will develop the software as a team. So let's see this example. This will be easily understood by you. So here, so if we have two systems, the system 1 and system 2, and there are many employees. So there are 5 working days like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. So in Monday, at the system 1 and for the program X, A and B will be working. For the Tuesday, for the same, in the same system 1 and for the same program X, C and D will be working. On the Wednesday, for same program X, A and C will be working. In the Thursday, for the same program X, B and D will be working, and Friday, E and F will be working. So while working on the system 1 for program X on Monday, who will be working? A and B will be working. So that does not mean that C and D will be on leave. So while A and B are working for program X, C and D will be working on program Y on the system 2. Like that, if Wednesday A and C are working for program X, so for the program Y, Wednesday B and D will be working. So they will be actually not on leave, they are actually working for a team. So what is the advantages of this? So for the program X, all are involved, A, B, C, D, E. So there are 5 employees, they are involved in the program X. So whenever any changes need, so A can be changed, B can be changed, C is also capable for changing the code, E also capable for changing that code. So if A or C is absent on that day, so B, D and E are there to accommodate the customer's changing requirements. So this is the working principle of pair programming and ownership. So we will work on a team and we will capable of changing any code. So we will capable of changing the code for our improvement. And the 8th principle says continuous integration. As soon as the work on a task is complete, it is integrated into the whole system. After any such integration, all the unit tests in the system must be passed. So we have already seen it while giving the example of college management software. Once my admission is ready, I will deploy the admission to the customer, and when my lesson plan will be ready, then I will integrate the lesson plan into the admission and I will deploy the system to the customer. And once my attendance will be ready, I will integrate the attendance into the previous system. So previous system means that the admission and the lesson plan would be there, the attendance will be merged with them, then that will deploy to the customer. So while integrating the lesson plan into the admission, we should test the lesson plan individually, and after integrating the lesson plan into the admission, we will again test the whole system. And while integrating the attendance will be tested individually. Then after integration, the whole system should be tested. And once the test is successful, then we will go for deploying the system to the customer. The next principle says sustainable pace. So sustainable pace means the extreme programmers says that there is no need for overtime. Whatever the working time is there, the large amount of overtime are not considered acceptable, as the net effect is often to reduce code quality and medium-term productivity. So actually overtime leads to reduce the code quality and medium-term productivity. So the extreme programmer says that there is no need of overtime. Whatever the working time is there, we should finish our project with that working time. And the last principle says on-site customer. So on-site customers are the representative of the end user of the system, and they should be available full time for the use of the XP team. In an extreme programming process, the customer is a member of the development team and is responsible for bringing system requirements to the team for implementation. So on-site customer actually plays a vital role in case of extreme programming. Without the on-site customer or the customer proxy, we cannot apply the extreme programming. So their responsibility is to bringing the whatever the requirements from the customer to the development team for the implementation. Actually, the customer is not capable of implementing his own requirement. That's why there are some software developers, and that's why there are some software company. So that's why there are some customer proxy. They will interact with the customer. They are actually the middleman in between the development team and the customer. That middleman, that is the on-site customer, will take the requirement from the customer and that will give to the development team, and the development team will work on those requirements which will given by the on-site customer. And also the on-site customer helps us for the alpha testing. That means before the whole system will given to the customer or the end user for beta testing, before that the on-site customer should test the whole system. So after test successfully, we will go for beta testing. So on-site customers are actually very important for the agile method or for extreme programming. So these are the 10 practices or 10 principles of extreme programming. Have a great day. Thank you.